I got the world's greatest husband. His name is Keith. I love you.
I just got home from work and my wife wasn't there.
Do you guys believe that she was kidnapped?
It's a wonderful, wonderful life with you.
Nobody would have ever imagined that this would have blown up the way that it did.
Logistically, what was the most challenging part about making this? Because obviously you do have a lot of archival footage available to you, which is nice versus some other cases. But, I'm sure there are challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I think a challenge, in this case was, in a lot of ways, this is a psychological horror series. And so you're really getting into headspace and you're getting into manipulation. And those things aren't necessarily visually the most easy to depict. Also, all of this is taking place over a 6-year span of time. So I think for us, it was trying to figure out a way to visually and sort of experientially place the viewer into Keith's headspace for this 6-year period of time, because this is a story about a man who is manipulated by his wife for 6 years and is essentially just blasted with her trauma, blasted with her lies. And so he's just trying to sort of make his way through the world where he's not quite sure what to believe. And I think for us, that was the most challenging part, was just to kind of get inside that headspace. And as you see in the series, we try a lot of different things. We try to be super overwhelming visually at times, with colors and sound. We have an incredible composer, Dan Deacon. And so I think that we really just tried to get the viewer just to feel that sort of unease and to just never feel like they're on sort of steady ground, much like Keith.
An underdeveloped thing about the story that we explore in the show was how racist it was, right? And that not only did she implicate 2 women in this sort of like forced abduction, but it was 2 women of color, 2 Hispanic women. And she kept on with that. And so I think that obviously is such a part of this that is so uncomfortable. And so we really wanted to there's all these different aspects of it. So I found it in terms of the difficulty factor, including all these disparate points, but also what I think Michael did so well was he does it as the audience knows things, right? The film is not ahead of the audience. And so you basically chart what it was like to live and to read about this, and then to get the inside access to it. And you see all those people, Chris Hansen, everybody knocking on the door of Keith Papini, and you have that shot where he's like, come on guys, go away, and we're with him, that camera is with him, right? And so what I found really difficult about, and what the editors did so masterfully, was that they charted the experience of the audience. So that's why it feels like a roller coaster, because you're just getting in all this information at certain times that reflect the chaos of it. Versus some be like, okay, she was force abducted. We start there. And it was like, Michael was so clear on, no, we can't know what happened. We have to go along with what the story is. And I thought that was, genius.
I know it was a while back, but when you felt the vindication of, because I know you all had sort of set up your own little kind of investigative continuing units, looking into, when you realized that somebody who was on your list was actually involved in a capacity, right? Not to the capacity you thought. Were you just what what is that kind of emotional journey like?
No, you're right. It was, the very first night I go in there, I say, check out James. And at the time I couldn't remember his last name. Because that was the first night. It wasn't until later I figured out it was James Reyes. And you kind of see the photos. We had a timeline. It says James Reyes. You see that it says abusive underneath, because she used to always tell me how this James guy was so abusive to her. So it's obviously, this is like a pattern with her of, lying, obviously. And, we had guys at the house, watching the house. And it does make you wonder, what if we kick the door down? What if we go in that house? So it's very frustrating when you find out, especially in the documentary, and I'm not sure how that comes across from people on the outside. You could probably share with me, but the sheriff's office told me he wasn't a suspect, and that we don't need to follow up on that lead. So of course, limited resources. We're moving our resources somewhere else to the next person. So having the knowledge that we were that close right there it's definitely frustrating. It's there's definitely been times of extreme anger, but then also there's forgiveness in there. And I don't blame law enforcement, because at the end of the day, it wasn't them, it was Sherri, right? So and who knows, what if I do go in that house and something really bad happened to James, you know, because Sherri, I'm sure, would have put on a show, and she technically probably would have got away with it if something would have happened to James, because she would have been beat up and chained. Like, who's gonna believe? Are we gonna believe this guy, or are we gonna believe this girl who's got physical harm done? And then it could have been a whole different outcome, and she could have got away with it, you know?
After 22 days, honestly, I just expected to find her dead. But once she was discovered and seeing the injuries was shocking.
The way she looked at me in that moment, I felt like she was lying.